A reading from Isaiah. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried in their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A gospel reading from the second chapter of Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler, who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there, ahead of them, went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Grace and peace to you, my friends in Christ. Sometimes it's the people no one imagines anything of who do things that no one can imagine. This quote's often attributed to Alan Turing, known as the father of computer science. However, like many inspirational quotes, his own family disputes this quote's legitimacy, but the spirit behind it is not far from what he meant, honestly, for our ability to be here and worship today. Turing was an unassuming and quiet mathematician, and he cracked the German codes during World War II. It's believed that his efforts brought the war to an end 2 years earlier than it would have been if it had gone on longer. His story even got turned into a movie about 10 years ago called The Imitation Game, which starred Benedict Cumberbatch. They definitely got that character right, didn't they? Now, whether Turing said this quote or not, I think the words shine a light on the people around us who can make a difference in our world that we might underestimate or overlook. Turing himself did something unimaginable. A guy who just loved math was able to create a machine that decoded 84,000 messages a month. Throughout our history, we can see the difference that people can make when they react to situations instead of ignoring what's right in front of them. Every year, we gather for worship on the first Sunday of January, and we hear the story of the visitors to Bethlehem, the Magi, the wise men, the ones who show up within the first 2 years of Jesus' life. But they don't go to Bethlehem first. They go to see this guy. They go to the home of the king. Now, they expect King Herod has a new Messiah at his palace in Jerusalem. So to say that Herod is more than a little alarmed when he hears from the Magi is a bit of an understatement. So who exactly is this King Herod, or Herod the Great? Don't confuse those terms as him being on the same team as the Jewish people that he ruled over. But Herod's backstory is pretty messy. Now, his family had been forced into converting to Judaism when he was young, so he was raised Jewish, even though he was of Arab origin. And his dad, who had power, had good relations with the emperor. And so Julius Caesar, when Herod gained power, he gave him a lot of credit. He was in the favor of the empire. And so as more opportunities would come along, Herod would continue to choose power. He would continue to choose more empire. And so by the time Herod was 36, he became the unchallenged king of the Jews, even though that was a title that had little to do with religion. He divorced his first wife, Doris, because his new wife was a Hasmonean princess, and it would give him more allies to take over more land, more of Judea, all by himself. He lived the opposite lifestyle of an observant Jew, in excess. He was ruthless. He had little regard for the needs of others if it didn't benefit him. And he kept aligning with Rome and gaining more and more territory. He built palaces. He even rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem, a very grandiose construction. Probably would have gone even more over the top, honestly, but it said Herod was offended. He was worried about offending the Pharisees. Those were the majority leaders within the Jewish power structure, and he knew that they considered him to be an outsider or a foreigner, so he had to create this illusion that he was still one of them. But he wasn't. He didn't devour the stories of his acquired ancestry. He didn't know the background or the promises of a Messiah found in Isaiah. So how disruptive it must have been when these Magi, these astrologers from the east, show up looking for Herod's newborn, non-existent son. Herod hears this and thinks something might have happened in Rome. He thinks somebody else might have taken power, and now he knows what happens when someone else takes power. His own life, his own power is at stake. Professor Warren Carter wrote an article about Herod called Allies, Spies, Lies, and Infanticides, a rhyming pattern of strategies that this tyrant will take. The allies in this story, however, are the chief priests and the scribes. Remember, Herod doesn't know the stories from the prophets, but they do. They say, hey, Herod, you know the prophet Micah? He predicted the Messiah would come to Bethlehem. So, does Herod send an army? Not yet. Strategy 2. He's got these new messengers who've shown up at his doorstep, the Magi. They're right in front of him. He's like, what could I do with you guys? I'm going to actually have you guys be some spies for me. You guys can go to Bethlehem and check this out. And please, he even tells them, worship this new king, greet him, say all these great things about him, and then let me know that you found him. Come back and tell me about it. Be my He doesn't tell them this, but be my spies. And after the Magi leave, we learn that this is all a political lie. He doesn't mean a word of it. Herod wants to go see this baby all right, but not to worship him. The Magi never return. They don't come back. They know better. They go home another way. And thank God for that. Jesus, at this pivotal moment early in his life, is spared and his family flees to safety in Egypt. That does not stop Herod. As Carter says, he employs his fourth strategy, a ruthless, vicious attack on the infants of Bethlehem and the surrounding area. An extreme overreaction to an entire group of people. No checking papers or having justice. His request is met without any question. They're just following orders. And this event doesn't show up in the history books, only the Bible. And I keep wondering why. It's probably because there weren't a whole lot of people affected, but that it's also in line with many of the other actions of Herod throughout his life. Many other people who were killed off, who were a threat. It's just a tyrant doing evil things. So here we are, friends. What a way to begin the new year, huh? What a happy story to dwell on the bad guys in the story of Jesus. But I think that this story actually can point to a few things for us to be mindful of. First, and this might seem a bit obvious, we are in a sin-filled world. Big things happen that are out of our control. But what I'm concerned about is how quickly we succumb to those temptations. Yesterday morning, we woke up to the news that our country had captured the Venezuelan president and an evil, oppressive leader, Nicolas Maduro. He'd been captured. Now, Maduro is no saint. I would argue he's got a bit of King Herod in him. He won a disputed election. He's done a lot of horrible, horrible things. But we also gather in the sanctuary, and we know that there are big implications for what happened, the way that our country intervened. What's going to happen next? I'm a pastor. I'm not a political scientist or a prophet, not that kind of prophet. So I'm not here to predict what's going to happen. But what I do know is that whenever stuff like this happens, people will be in need. People will be labeled as the enemy. Neighbors will feel threatened. Sides will dig in. And even more conflict will get stirred up in our country. So what will our faith compel us to do in this time? And the answer's right in front of us. Be a Magi. Go a different way. Be aware. See the humanity in our neighbors and the stranger. See the vulnerability of God's created beings. When confronted with situations where things aren't quite right, think about the Magi who weren't afraid to embrace something new. They could have easily caved to the fear of Herod and did what he said, but they didn't. And they honored and worshiped this Jesus that they saw, and then they helped protect him. They don't tell Herod, they go home a different way, and they give Jesus and his family time to escape. And Jesus will survive. And when Jesus survives, amazing things happen. Jesus will teach us about loving our enemies and how loving our enemies is like loving God. And then he'll tell us and his disciples how we treat the most vulnerable among us is how we also treat God. What is the other way? I think about when the world's clamoring for sensationalism and casting aside entire groups of people. That's when we go a different way. So I got homework for you today. Yes, you guys love homework. A little different than my normal homework, okay? When you leave worship, and here's the deal. Some of you are at home, so think about how you could apply this in different ways as well. But when you leave today, go home a different way. If you are prone to getting lost, please just disregard this advice. But try taking a different road. Even if it's a way that you've been before, but like not your normal way of going home. And be observant. What do you notice? What do you see about our community that you might not have seen before if you weren't looking at it with new eyes? Who do you see? Because sometimes it's the people no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. This is our time to do the unimaginable, to be non-judgmental neighbors, to create the community we long for. And when we do that, we honor Christ through going another way, the way of Jesus Christ. Amen.